devastation and ruin greets Palestinians returning to Khan Yunis. 6 months on from the start of the conflict, Israeli soldiers withdraw from one Gazan city but make plans to target Hamas in another.
I have no words to express my feelings. Our memories, our dreams, our childhoods and our family are gone.
Although Israeli hostages are still being held, tonight Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a date had been set for the invasion of the city of Rafah, despite the US and Britain warning him not to. John will be live in Israel with the latest. Also tonight, millions gather as a total eclipse of the sun spreads darkness across swathes of the world in a breathtaking spectacle. Labour's plans for the struggling NHS, Sir Keir Starmer tells Rebecca that under his leadership, new private partnerships will be sought to help the health service. Sub-postmasters reunite in the village where their fight back began, hoping for fresh answers from post office bosses as they prepare to face the official inquiry.
Why can't they just come clean for once and get it sorted? Why are they still hiding so many things still? We knew that they're lying.
And the remarkable technology making gaming accessible to those with disabilities, and the man who made it his mission to make it possible.
This is ITV News at 10 with Raghi Omar.
Good evening. The day after the 6-month anniversary of the start of the Gaza war, and rubble and ruin greeted Palestinians as they returned to what's left of the city of Khan Yunis. It has experienced destruction to such an extent that some couldn't even find where their homes once stood. More than half the buildings in Gaza's second city have experienced damage as a result of the Israeli assault. Their troops have now withdrawn, but what's left behind has been described as uninhabitable. And that fate could await those currently living and sheltering in the city of Rafah, after the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tonight said there is a date for the IDF soldiers to go in. Israel says it is still committed to destroy Hamas for their brutal murder of 1,200 of its citizens and to free the 130 still believed to be held hostage. So as one Gazan city begins the arduous task of rebuilding, another braces for worse to come.
A room with a view of the obliterated city of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. This place was consumed by war for 4 months, and evacuees who call it home had feared there wouldn't be much left to return to when the time came. Today was that time, and their worst fears were confirmed. To the toll of this war can now be added the broken hearts of the residents who found only rubble where their homes had been.
No words can describe my pain. I have no words to express my feelings. Our memories, our dreams, our childhoods and our family are gone. They didn't find anything to salvage.
Others also expressed shock and disbelief at what they discovered.
We came to see what happened to the house, but we couldn't find any houses in the first place. There's just rubble. You can't live here. Animals can't live here. So how's a person supposed to? The destruction is unreal.
Hamas responded to the IDF withdrawal from southern Gaza by trying to fire rockets from Khan Yunis. These are Israeli drone pictures of their own missiles hitting some launch sites. Across Gaza, the damage and displacement is so extensive that 100% of the population now depends on handouts. At this cooking station, the food being given out was provided by World Central Kitchen before it suspended operations following the killing of 7 of its staff this day last week. The cook, Mohammed Al-Ammareen, said that unless the suspension was lifted, his stockpiles would run out by the end of this week. The IDF pullout from southern Gaza led many commentators here to conclude that major ground operations on the Strip are over. However, tonight, after one of his cabinet threatened to bring down the government if there's no assault on the city of Rafah, Mr. Netanyahu soon appeared to announce that a date had been set for one. As it enters its 7th month, it's far from clear where exactly this war goes from here.
Well, John is in Tel Aviv tonight. John, an indication that a date for the assault on Rafah seems to be completely at odds, doesn't it, with talk of a ceasefire and warnings from the UK and the US for Netanyahu not to go into Rafah. So what do you think is going on?
Good evening, Raggy. I think Mr. Netanyahu said that to prevent ultra-right-wingers from collapsing his government, but the remark was at odds with what his defence minister said earlier today, that now is an opportune time for a ceasefire. And I think the return home of the hostages would be tangible progress for the Israelis at a time when American pressure has forced them into something of a retreat from the southern Gaza Strip. The problem for the Israelis is that same American pressure has forced them to give in to key Hamas demands without the terror group actually having to give anything in return. Now, Hamas has been calling for the flow of more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Well, that's now happening. Yesterday, 322 aid lorries went into the Strip. That's the highest number in a single day since the war began. Hamas has also been calling for all Israeli troops to leave the Gaza Strip, and by and large, that has now happened without Hamas giving anything in return. And going forward with the hostages, I think there's a danger that Hamas will dig its heels in on other demands because it knows the Israelis really want a ceasefire, not least because the Americans have clipped their wings in terms of their military operations on the Gaza Strip.
John, always good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, darkness was greeted by rapture in parts of North America today as a total solar eclipse tracked across the continent. Even if, in a few places, cloudy conditions dashed the hopes of some, the descent into darkness was still otherworldly. Indeed, eclipses are so remarkable that they can be tracked through the pages of history. The oldest recorded eclipse is believed by some to have been in November 3340 BC, thought to be seen in rock carvings in County Meath in Ireland. In the year 585 BC, a battle in what is modern-day Turkey was halted when eclipses inspired both sides to put down their weapons and negotiate a peace treaty. Closer to home and time, many will remember the last total eclipse visible from the UK back in 1999. And modern science means we can now predict them to the second. NASA has actually published when they're going to happen as far ahead, if you can believe it, as the year 3000. It's not quite as long to wait for the next one here in the UK. That will happen in September 2090. Even by then, it seems unlikely the site will have lost its mysterious majesty.
The moment our nearest star faded to a halo was seen across a huge swathe of the Americas. The track of totality started in Mexico, where eclipse watchers took this magnificent time-lapse footage and tried to capture the grandeur of something which needs to be experienced firsthand. It didn't take long for the shadow of the moon to cross the border into the United States, hitting Texas first. In Eagle Pass, a football stadium was plunged into an eerie darkness. The city lights of Dallas visible as for a few minutes, day became night, its residents overwhelmed. As the eclipse moved north towards Arkansas,
I vow to be your constant.
It provided the perfect backdrop for a mass wedding, as 300 couples got hitched, among them Ashley Smith and Gary Niebel.
I love you, and I'm happy that I'm here doing this, that we're here.
Oh yeah, guy couldn't be happier. I love you.
And of course a wedding band was playing, well, what else could it be?
Here comes the sun.
16 minutes later, it was Indiana's turn to experience the majesty of this celestial show. There were 50,000 people at Indianapolis's famous speedway, roaring their approval at the progress of the moon rather than race cars.
Well, now we're in totality. You can take these off and look with the naked eye. It's just an incredible spectacle. The crowd is really buzzing. The temperatures drop right off. And you can see why this has fascinated mankind since the beginning of time.
It's so cool. Everything got really dark. It looks like it shouldn't be happening. It looks like an eyeball. It looks like a godly thing.
Yes, it's an incredible phenomena that this is evidence there's a God.
Expect what emotion is going to hit you. It's just that instant. It's just there.
Makes you feel small.
Yes, and it's amazing how we all collectively react to it.
And it's just
almost
coming
in
back
the
out
same
the
way.
other side, yeah?
Yeah.
As the eclipse moved progressively north, it happened to cross one of America's great natural wonders. Niagara Falls was right in the narrow band of totality for a truly epic moment. The best view was saved for one of the last states to see the eclipse, Vermont, on the Canadian border. Here, the sudden arrival of the moon's shadow was given extra drama in this speeded-up video.
It looks like dusk.
Wow.
All around.
And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
America won't see another total eclipse for 20 years, but this was a moment to savour, a fleeting glimpse of the sun's corona and a humbling reminder of our dependence on its rays.
And Dan is in Indianapolis. Dan, you said that its grandeur was something that needed to be experienced to really understand it. So what was it like?
It was really profound, Draghi. I think the tens of thousands of people that are just leaving here today will agree with me. You've got to come and experience this. The pictures and the videos give you a sense of it, but it doesn't capture the full majesty of that moment as the temperature plunges and you can watch the sun disappearing. It's wholly unnatural, really. I guess if you're sitting at home thinking, oh, I wish I was there, I wish I'd booked my plane ticket to America, well, don't worry, there is another opportunity. There's another full total eclipse in Spain and Portugal and Iceland on the 12th of August in 2026.
Well, people should get booking their flights, I guess. Thanks very much indeed, Dan. Back home, and Sir Keir Starmer has repeatedly insisted that the Labour Party has changed drastically under his leadership. That is certainly true in the party's policy towards the NHS, where Jeremy Corbyn railed against private involvement in healthcare. It is now a vital part of Labour's plans for government. In an exclusive interview with Rebecca, Sir Keir said they'd explore working with more companies in order to help cut waiting lists.
At Kingsmill Hospital in the East Midlands, the man vying to be our next Prime Minister, setting out how he'd get the NHS back on its feet.
And this is
Ralphie.
Keir Starmer exclusively revealing to ITV News how his Labour government would work hand in glove with business to improve the health service. Like this, a partnership with Virgin Media O2 to give children with type 1 diabetes the latest technology.
We want to do much more of this in the NHS.
Alongside their plan to use private hospitals to cut NHS waiting lists, it's bound to make some on the left feel tense.
Isn't that just privatisation by the back door?
Where there's capacity in the private sector so that people can go from the NHS to the private sector for their operations, that should be done to bring down the waiting lists. The principle that healthcare, the NHS, should be free at the point of need, of use, is absolutely fundamental to us. That's unshakable.
Shouldn't you just give the NHS the funding it needs so that you don't have to lean on the private sector?
Well, look, we're in a crisis situation at the moment, and the question we have to answer is the government having allowed the waiting list to get to 7.5 going on for 8 million people. How do we get that down at speed?
Your health secretary says that those who disagree are middle-class lefties. Would you describe them as that?
I'll tell you what I do, and I think it's a really important question for politicians, which is, who do you have in your mind's eye when you make decisions? And I have in my mind's eye working people who desperately need the NHS to be better. It's country first, party second, and that's the approach I take to the NHS as well as everything else.
Half of people think that ministers should increase taxes to spend more on the NHS. Will you commit to do that?
Well, look, do we need to spend more on the NHS? Yes, of course we do, but it also needs reform. The amount of money that's wasted, that's like putting water into a leaky pot. It doesn't make any sense.
But will you increase taxes to get that extra investment that so many say the NHS needs?
Well, where we have committed extra money, we've said exactly where it's coming from and what it will be used for, but it has to come with reform.
You can't bring in reforms if your staff are out on the picket line. How would you resolve the dispute with junior doctors? Would you agree to give them the 35% pay increase they want?
The first thing is I don't want to see those strikes.
So what would you offer them?
I think that 35% is too high. The doctors actually are talking additionally about terms and conditions. I do think there are things that can be looked at there.
The government already uses the private sector to relieve pressure on the NHS, and waiting lists have been falling in recent months. Voters will decide who they trust with their health. Rebecca Barry, News at 10 in East Midlands.
Well, back in Westminster, a story about Sir Keir Starmer's deputy, Angela Raina, just isn't going away. The Tories have demanded the party investigate whether she should have paid more capital gains tax on a property she sold back in 2015. The Labour leader defended her again today and insisted that nobody was interested in the story. And Harry joins me now. Is he right, do you think?
Well, Labour have repeatedly insisted that this is a non-story. Keir Starmer called it a smear pushed by the Conservative Party today. But he and other senior Labour MPs keep getting asked questions about it. And this is all about the sale of a former council house Angela Raina owned in Stockport, and whether she and her then husband claimed it as their principal residence. She says it was her principal residence, or whether they claimed her then husband's home nearby as, in fact, their principal residence. Now, this is important because it affects the amount of capital gains tax Angela Raina would have paid on the sale of her property. There's also a question about whether she was registered at the correct address on the electoral roll. On that issue, police say they're reviewing a decision not to investigate claims Angela Raina may have broken electoral law. On the capital gains tax issue, Angela Raina insists that she's received legal advice and says she's done nothing wrong. Now, Keir Starmer was asked about that today. He says he's not seen that legal advice himself. He says it's not appropriate for him to look at it.
Angela Raina's been asked no end of questions about this. She's answered them all. She said she's very happy to answer any further questions from the police or from any of the authorities. I don't need to see the legal advice. My team has seen it.
Now, you might look at these allegations and think, well, it's hardly the crime of the century here that Angela Raina's been accused of. But look, we are in an election year. Shadow cabinet ministers are going to come under more and more scrutiny as the year goes on. And so far, this is a story that Labour haven't been able to shake off.
All right, Harry, thank you very much indeed. Now, a nationwide manhunt continues tonight to find a man wanted after a fatal attack on a mother pushing a pram in Bradford. 25-year-old Habibur Massoum's picture has been circulated to every police force in the country and to border force authorities. He was last seen getting off a bus just 20 minutes after the attack. People have been warned not to approach him if they see him. The victim has been named as 27-year-old Kulsuma Akhtar. Officers said the two knew each other. Her young baby was unharmed in the attack. Now, along with Airbus, Boeing makes up the backbone of the global aviation industry. As I speak, thousands of its planes will be in the air around the world. But tonight, the company is dealing with another blow to its reputation following another technical incident. This time, passengers were forced to watch as an engine cover peeled off an aircraft in the US. It's triggered another investigation and yet more questions for Boeing's beleaguered bosses.
Let's go ahead and declare an emergency.
If you're a nervous flyer, or even if you're not, this isn't the kind of thing you want to hear or see when you look out of your aeroplane window. The loose piece of fuselage here is what's known as cowling. Normally it's wrapped round the engine and held in place with a latch, like a car bonnet. In this case, say the experts, somebody left the latch unfastened.
Now, of course, humans aren't perfect. We all make errors, slips, lapses and so forth. And the cowl has been left in the down position but without the latches secure. And then the walk-around inspection isn't 100% effective, and the aircraft departs with the cowls not latched securely.
Human error it may have been, but pictures like this circulating on social media are the last thing Boeing needs. Nearly 200 737 jets were temporarily grounded earlier this year after a door panel on an Alaskan Airlines flight blew out in mid-air. Authorities in America found 4 key bolts around the door appeared not to have been installed properly.
We're going to talk about transparency and responsibility, and that'll be it.
Boeing's outgoing chief executive, Dave Calhoun, has been trying to repair reputational damage ever since a different version of the 737 was involved in crashes in 2018 and 2019, which killed more than 300 people. Despite those disasters, the 737 is still Boeing's biggest selling commercial aircraft.
The customers which have orders now might change those orders to another manufacturer or to a different aircraft within the Boeing set of aircraft that it's producing. Either way, that would be not a good thing for the 737 over the long term, to have customers, large airlines around the world, make a long-term bet that this airplane is not going to be good for them 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
The 737 has flown hundreds of millions of flights since it first went into service, but it remains an aeroplane with an image problem, and fixing it will be an urgent task for Boeing's new boss. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
Now, for a second time this season, Everton Football Club has been docked points for breaching Premier League financial rules. Clubs are allowed to lose £105 million in a 3-year period. Everton have been found to have breached that by £16.6 million. The latest penalty for the club is 2 points, meaning the club does drop closer to the Premier League relegation zone. Now, 15 years ago, a small village hall in Warwickshire became the location for the start of a movement to uncover one of the greatest scandals in modern British history. The sub-postmasters who met in Fenny Compton that day had had enough of being accused of stealing and decided something needed to be done. We all know, of course, where their campaign ended. They have already ensured that all those wrongly convicted will be cleared, and following the revelations from our post office tapes, attention has now turned to what post office bosses knew and when. They are the very questions that would be posed to former executives when they appear before the official inquiry this week.
They're back to the one place they always knew they were among friends.
It's a very special place to all of us.
Today, meeting everybody, all happy faces.
To the village where the post office fight back began.
You're not convicted criminals anymore.
Fenny Compton.
It is the setting in the centre of Britain for the drama of their lives.
Today, Fenny Compton. Tomorrow, the world.
Played out for real too often as tragedy. But now a decisive new act begins. The next crucial phase of the long-running inquiry.
Why can't they just come clean for once and get it sorted? Why are they still hiding so many things still? We knew that they're lying. It's all in the public domain now as well, they've been lying. But why still delaying it?
Seema Misra, jailed on her son's 10th birthday. She was 8 weeks pregnant. Vipin Patel, financially ruined and still waiting for compensation. And Jess Kaur, driven to attempt suicide by the torment of false accusation.
I can't turn back the clocks. I can't get that time back with my family. 6 months, even though I was in hospital, it felt like I was in prison.
I was convicted, so had a criminal conviction, so that made matters worse. And people in the community don't look at you with respect and honor.
What had been agreed was that we would be provided with the entire email records.
It comes after a week of shocking revelations that top executives were warned their IT system was flawed, that the prosecutions may be unsafe.
It just adds to the burning anger inside the whole group to know that they were going to try and whitewash and bury this.
Lee Castleton, made bankrupt by the post office, relishes the moment the tables will be turned on his old accusers. Paula Venables, the Post Office's former chief executive, who's expressed her sorrow to the victims, but in the inquiry will be asked to account for her actions.
What do you want from her?
Truth, honesty, openness. We deserve that.
And the truth, hidden for so long, may prove dangerous.
You believe people who were in charge at the post office at the time could end up in jail?
That certainly could happen, and it cannot just be the case that we have these kind of scandals, and we've never had a scandal like this before, but this kind of scandal, and then people are not held to account.
This has been called a very British scandal, borne by ex-victims with dignity and fortitude. They've come a long way since their first meeting in this little village, and it's not over yet. John Ray, News at 10, Fenny Compton.
And for a full rundown of what to expect from the inquiry this week, head to the news section of our streaming service, ITVX. Now, for anyone in the year 1900, the sight of French soldiers marching up to Buckingham Palace would have been very bad news. But that was before the Entente Cordiale, which celebrated its 120th anniversary today. The 1904 peace treaty has lasted ever since. To celebrate, 2 French regiments took part in the changing of the guard today. It's the first time a non-Commonwealth country has taken part in the ceremony. Now, among the tens of millions of video gamers in the UK are a group of people indebted to the work of Mick Donegan. His company makes specialised equipment that allows those with disabilities to access mainstream games. The remarkable technology includes adapted controllers and even eye-tracking software. For some of those he's helped, it has been transformative, and his efforts are this week to be recognised with an honorary BAFTA award.
Like many teenagers, Tiago enjoys his video games. But having cerebral palsy meant for him using a standard games console or computer mouse has never been possible. So instead, he's using a specially adapted joystick, buttons on his headrest and eye gaze technology to play, all a far cry from his early days.
I couldn't access any games. I used to have to watch my friends play games or direct my mum on how to play the game, which really frustrated me. I can't hold the controllers on any games console, and most of the games were too quick for me to manage.
Tiago was 6 when the Special Effect charity started helping him with special gaming equipment. Now 17, he's studying gaming development and coding at college.
It has opened the world of gaming up to me. I think it is very important. There are so many barriers in place for people like me with disabilities.
Special Effect was set up in 2007 by Mick Donegan, a former teacher working with children with special needs who had no chance to play like their peers. Since then, the charity has supported many thousands of people, working with occupational therapists and game developers to do something which was excluding many gamers at that time.
There's actually nowhere in the UK that we could send them that had that sort of level of expertise that young people, children and young people like Tiago need, for them to be able to use the best part of their body, to be able to have the best control, to be able to control technology. And so I just decided nobody's doing it, so I'm going to have to start it myself.
The charity has developed free online games, including some for those who can only use eye movement. It is a potentially huge market for the industry, and now the likes of Xbox are working with Special Effect.
What does it mean to you to be recognised by BAFTA?
Well, first of all, it was a shock. I genuinely thought they'd sent it to the wrong person, or that it was, that it was a mistake or spam or something. It's absolutely terrific, and not only is it great for the team, but also for all the people who support us. We get support from the games industry, we get support from local businesses, we get support from gamers, and this is something for everybody.
Deserved recognition for the charity that is changing the game for gaming. Nina Nannart, News at 10 in Oxfordshire.
And that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching, and from all the team, good night.